For further background about this webinar series in general and today's topic in particular, I would like to introduce our colleague, John Wucher. At this point, we are now...
The way that actually plays out, some of the examples and the way it plays out is in the area of, let's say, unifying purpose and vision, about organizing around a unifying purpose and vision. We've created network, sort of large network gatherings that we call Yachdav, through which we share, introduce new ideas and practices among all the stakeholders, and message out common purpose and vision. It's also important to acknowledge here that there's really deep engagement with Federation, who is the primary funder, in this initiative, continuously. It's a continuous and deep engagement, which involves their having participating, having staff that participate in some of the work that we do, as well as continuously reviewing what's going on through their lay committees and planning processes. And another way in which this kind of unifying purpose gets played out will be through prospective salons. I mean, this hasn't happened yet, but the idea is that some of the congregations that are the most innovative and acting as partners in this whole enterprise will themselves host other congregations and play a role that way. In the area of knowledge and moving knowledge, we've created partnership collaborations. The partnership collaboration among the HUC JTS people, ourselves, and the experiment in congregational education work really closely. We spend days and days and days planning and thinking and working on all of this together and sharing our knowledge and resources. There are communities of practice and chavarot among the educators in areas such as family, Israel, teacher recruitment, etc. And we've also established a CMS system, a case management system internally that allows us to really document what's going on with our work with each of the congregations, and to be able to see it and talk about it and learn from what we're doing there. In the area of learning and adapting, we've created sets of living and learning seminars which are attended by the teams of educators and teachers from the different congregations who are working within the network, and that are also attended by the educational resource providers. We have webinars and the work of the coaches within the congregations. In the area of openness and experimentation, the coaching is one of the big areas that works with each of the congregation within the congregational settings in helping them to become places of openness and to be able to experiment more freely by engaging their lay leaders in ways they haven't before. And on our side, I would say the possibility of being open and experimental through our own work is developing with our growing transparency and the way in which we're working really closely with our primary funder. The last piece of communicating success, we try to do in as many ways as possible. We have a regular newsletter through which we are constantly putting out ways in which small successes and big successes have been achieved, and and kind of celebrating it all together. And we're also beginning to look at ways in which we can use social media to further that. Working out of the network model provides, Steve, if you want to move on, provides some social, provides some particular challenges. And these challenges include a lack of control. When you work out of a kind of network model and you have lots of people with whom you're collaborating, there's always an issue of where the local locus of control lies, or who really has authority at any given moment. And it's sometimes rather difficult to manage. And traditional ideas about management often don't work really well. I mean, I think it was in one of our readings that, for instance, the issue of outcomes and focus on outcomes, which is a traditional management approach, does not necessarily work very well or very easily in this kind of setting. Another challenge to the network model is what happens when there's an anemic flow of information and resources, meaning that the flow is too shallow or too sporadic to allow for any kind of sustained communication of ideas and for the collaborative learning needed for continuous innovation. A third potential challenge is what I would call the overload of information, which leads to a bottleneck somewhere in the network, and that takes place, if you're thinking about, something where you're working with a whole group of congregations, as we are in this particular kind of initiative. It can happen with the directors, let's say, of the educational programs themselves, who are just unable to deal with all the information that they need to, and it gets clogged up there, and we're not able to achieve what we need to achieve. And finally is a kind of fragmentation that takes place when some members of the network may be really well connected to each other, but are not very well connected to, or very weakly connected to, others in the network. So that's kind of the presentation that I wanted to provide at this point, and happy to take any questions. I mean, they can be related to each other, but sometimes it's just a question that the particular information that's going through is kind of too shallow or too sporadic, to allow for the kind of sustained communication that's needed, and for real collaborative learning to take place. The overload, I was really focusing on a point where particular nodes in the network, you will, or individuals or people with particular kinds of, are just unable to create the bottleneck. They can't deal with it. They can't move the information, so it becomes bottleneck. It could take place, as I said, within a congregation that is attempting to work on an innovative process, and I think we've all kind of experienced this, where the director themselves is so unable to deal with all the information that's coming at them because of the different things that they're doing, that the innovative process gets stopped up there and doesn't move throughout the rest of the congregation as it needs to in order for the initiative to work. It can also happen horizontally, across congregations or among the other partners in the network.
So at this point, what I would like to do is I would like to invite Judah to make his presentation, and then we'll come back after both presentations for either clarifying and or some sort of synthesizing between the two as we go forward. So Judah.
One of the challenges that I wanted to talk about today is that how do we sort of be leaders within central agencies? Within my framework, which is within the Federation framework, it's even more complicated. We have a very strange but an interesting organizational chart here, so that I'm basically 3 down from the CEO, even in terms of any decisions or any things that are made here. And then underneath me is a staff. And one of the pieces that I really liked that was sent out in advance is the all of the conductors and how they conduct the orchestra. This is about the only piece that we really have an ability to somehow control, that we do the best we can, which is really our staff. But after that, we really don't have that much. And I think that in an ideal situation, this is how I'd love to see everything, is that everybody looks to us as the central authority, and the community leaders, the rabbis, the educational directors, everybody's coming in one direction to us, and we're helping to manage the process. In reality,